suppose you had had to have government permission to go into New York. Do you think you would have had it any easier? Do you think you could have had as much independence as you've had?
And under the Friedman laissez-faire broadcasting system, there would have been more opportunities for this from Dayton, Ohio to get into New York.
Absolutely. There would have been more stations. There would have been, instead of 3 big networks, you would have had a much broader group of stations. You would have been able to break in much sooner. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it would have happened.
Can we take one here? We got to. Is the caller there?
Yes.
Just hang on a second. I'm doing my best. We'll be back in just a moment. Milton Friedman is reachable via United States mail, government-controlled as it is, and at the Hoover Institution, Stanford, California. The zip there is 94305. Okay, that's easy enough. In an age of bureaucratic numbers, mumbo-jumbo, this is a relatively simple address. Let him know how you feel. I know you're there, caller, at Stanford, California. Just one, I've got to get this in. Let's now, one more time, off the ivory tower. Your statement against government growth and too much spending, do I assume that you bring the same free-to-be irresponsible statements against military spending?
Well,
$140 billion?
You say 140 billion. 15 years ago, military spending was over twice as much as the spending of HEW. Today, the spending of HEW is over twice as much, twice as much as military spending. 15, 20 years ago, before Vietnam, military spending was 9% of the national income. Today, it's between 4 and 5%. I said earlier, the 2 basic functions of the government are to protect the nation against foreign enemies,
yes,
and to protect the citizen against his fellows. Military spending is essential for the first. Of course, if we could do it in a private enterprise way, it'd be a lot cheaper.
Would you like to try?
I have never been able to figure out a way to turn the military, the defense of the country over to private enterprise. I'd give a prize to anybody who can figure out how to do it.
Professor Friedman, there are critics who say that it already is, and that the reason old men declare wars is because they have a financial investment in the companies that make bombs and bullets and guns and uniforms and all it takes to get the...
I don't believe that for a moment. I don't doubt that the people who have those interests try to exert their influence in that way. But this is so serious and so important a matter that I really think it's a travesty on what's going on.
No one is saying it's a conscious effort, but the fact that the profit is there has got to influence behavior. It's got to. Indecision.
You mean that's the reason why our military spending has gone down so sharply?
Are you, 140 billion isn't enough for you? Do you know how much an aircraft carrier costs? I got this just today, this week from Senator Proxmire. $5 billion for the boat and $5 billion for the planes on it. $10 billion for one boat. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a lot too much, and might very likely, if you could turn that over to private enterprise, it would cost half as much. But we have to have a strong military, and at the moment, let me get to this because I think it's very important. If this country is fundamentally threatened, in my opinion, it is threatened much more by our weak position in foreign affairs than it is threatened by any mistakes that we have made in economic management. We can recover from the mistakes in economic management. But if we put ourselves in a position in foreign policy of the kind we've been putting ourselves in, we cannot recover. We're through. It's a one-time off.
That's directly opposite the statements of many, many honorable, reasonable people who are saying it's the cost of bacon and the fact that the middle class can't make it to the next paycheck and the fact that several thousand people in the automobile industry are out of work that's going to threaten the integrity and strength of this country, not a group of students somewhere in a race.
It's not, well, you talk about a group of students. I'm not concerned about the group of students. I'm concerned about the Russian armies on both sides of that strait. I'm concerned about the fact that in our neglect we permitted the Russian to take over the base of Aden when the British left it in 1971. And they have built up a major military base with airplanes and so on, that they are now coming into Afghanistan. They've got both parts of the Persian Gulf in a pincers.
All right.
Oh my, how unrealistic can you be not to look at what's been happening to the relative strength and position of the Russians on the one hand and of ourselves on the other? And do you think they're spending that money and devoting their energy to that in order to have it sit idle? All
right, and what are you going to do with the workers who built all these airplanes after the order is canceled by the government? General Dynamics in Fort Worth, Boeing in Seattle. What is the economist going to do to help the economy, the local economy, when suddenly Big Daddy government cuts off the government?
Not a thing. Not a thing. And there's no reason to do anything, because all of those people and the people who bid in that included in their bids an allowance for the possibility and the danger that they would be cut off. And they will have to adjust just as all the other people have to adjust. What are you going to do for the people who are out of work when the public at large suddenly changes from wanting one kind of pair of shoes to another kind of pair of shoes? What are you going to do when the public at large decides it's not going to go in big cars, it's going to go in little cars? I don't want to do a thing. I want to let the private market work. The private market system is a system of profit and loss. And the loss part is just as essential as the profit part. It is a disgrace that we should be bailing out Chrysler. Chrysler ought to be allowed to go broke.
All right. I know. The caller is still there? All right, I'm going to try and get you on. I really am, and I'm sorry, but I have to break now. I have to. In the free enterprise system.
What you call is a tease.
We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm glad you waited. Sorry, you had a question?
Yes. I would like to ask
What?
Professor Friedman what the average middle-income taxpayer can do to get to quit being taken to the cleaners by the IRS.
All right, just give us a...
Unfortunately, very little. I do not believe that you can find a solution to that problem as individuals. I think we can find a solution to that problem as citizens.
Thanks very much to Milton Friedman. You're something. And have a nice day. Oh, free to choose the book. Don't forget the book. I'm happy to show off the book. Have a nice day, everybody.